Just a second. I'll get this set up. I didn't share this link before because I had to change it. Just trying to make sure people know. Okay, so let's see. This is still a work in progress, but it's almost done. I don't expect to stop a lot, but if I do, just know I'm trying to make notes for some corrections for the final version. Definitely let me know what you think, or if you have questions or comments in the comment section. But yeah, definitely let me know, and I hope that you like it. I'm also streaming two places at once, so that's weird. That's fun. Okay. And reading from another place on my screen. Here we go. Chapter 6, Restoring the Balance with Nature Connection. This is from I'm Whitney Sparks. Whitney Sparks, and my forthcoming book is called Radical Care, the Nature Radical Care, the Nature of Sacred Solidarity. Especially after you hear the chapter. Let me know what you think fits better. Chapter 6, Restoring the Balance with Nature Connection. Quote, Geography's discursive attachment to stasis and physicality, the idea that space just is, and that space and place are merely containers for human complexities and social relations, is terribly seductive. That which just is not only anchors our selfhood and feet to the ground, often aligned with spatial processes such as boundaries, color lines, proper places, fixed and settled infrastructures, streets, oceanic containers. Geography is not, however, secure and unwavering. We produce space, we produce its meanings, and we work very hard to make geography what it is. The interplay between domination and Black women's geographies is underscored by the social production of space. Concealment, marginalization, boundaries are important social processes. We make concealment happen. It is not natural, but rather names and organizes where racial, sexual differentiation occurs. Geographic domination is a powerful process. However, if we pursue the links between practices of domination and Black women's experiences in place, we see that Black women's geographies are lived, possible, and imaginable. Black women's geographies open up a meaningful way to approach both the power and possibilities of geographic inquiry. I am not suggesting that the connections between Black women and geography, the relationship between Black women and geography opens up a conceptual arena through which more humanly workable geographies can be and are imagined. Catherine McKittrick, Demonic Grounds, Black Women and the Cartographies of Struggle. So that is an excerpt from this book, which I don't have as close as I thought. So, this book, Black Women's Cartographies of Struggle. Great. Okay, so that was the opener. What is wilderness if not the epitome of nature? Life itself was born in wilderness, and to embrace life in the living, we must embrace qualities of wilderness too. And yet, the wilder the human behavior, even whole communities are deemed, the more likely legality will be leveled against them. There are countless examples from gerrymandering to gentrification. We need examples to inspire and understand how liberated society could be, and such inspiration can be freely ours when we let nature grow as much as possible. Wilderness is the mother, or perhaps grandmother, the living ancestor of solidarity. What happens to people when nature is genocided? When nature is not allowed its own freedom or space to live? The space becomes controlled, colonized. And this happens over and over every time rules of private property are obeyed or parroted, every time construction that will not go toward a literal habitat for humanity paves over dirt, prairie, forest, or bog. Quote, one has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that, quote, an unjust law is no law at all, end quote, end quote. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., letter from Birmingham jail. What is legal as opposed to illegal is a human judgment after all, and one which we all must constantly assess in order to be morally responsible. The role of toxic whiteness in trauma and the prerequisite of space from that noxious influence in healing cannot be overstated. And, as importantly, we must avoid destroying, penalizing, constricting, or constraining nature itself beyond what is necessary for us to live and thrive in a good way with each other in order to truly live in a free society. In the United States specifically, white people have forcibly concentrated Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC/POC respectively, into spaces and places such as cities, ghettos, behind borders, within reservations, in centers, camps, and jails, in rooms, positions, jobs, seats with no table, etc., where encounters with human nature are constant, yet encounters with wildlife, not just animals, but also plants, fungi, and entire ecosystems, aka Mother Nature, are increasingly, deliberately, painfully rare. Meanwhile, the price of living where encounters with wildlife and the holistic entirety of Mother Nature are much more frequent, approaching constant, is under white racial hierarchy, subjection to random and scheduled, periodic, intense, often sharp, but always, whether sharp or dull or soft, unnaturally power imbalanced encounters with white oppressionist individual and collective human behavior. By with white people, but also, to keep it really real 100, a sprinkling of token, usually light skinned or white passing, more often than not, non black POC. Yet, Mother Nature, aka wildlife, persists in infinitely myriad forms, even in urban areas. Did you know? Although traditionally it has been advised to avoid gathering and consuming them due to the widely parroted supposed risk of heavy metal contamination, quite contrary, like Mary Jane, an ambassador of urban weeds, to this stereotyped perception, even in cities, wild edible weeds have been lab tested by scientists and consistently found to be more nutritious than produce from the grocery store. Take purslane, rich in vitamins A, B, C, E, and omega 3 fatty acids, often growing like Tupac's proverbial rose in concrete. Walking to the open air market in Kingston, 9 months pregnant with my midwife and her 7-year-old granddaughter, the beautifully brown skinned birth worker stopped suddenly and started to pick this succulent apparent weed out from between the cracks in the sidewalk, telling us how beneficial it is and that people just don't know. I smiled as she educated us, recalling that Black healing wisdom must and can be reclaimed at every step. Not long before then, I developed an inexplicable, mildly inflamed hives like rash. My midwife prescribed me to walk around my neighborhood to look for Jamaican dandelion, a plant Jamaicans call dandelion but is unrelated to what non Jamaicans know as dandelion. It has yellow flowers that become slender seed pods and is in the bee and pea family. I was to pick the dried brown pods that rattled pleasantly. It took me more than one walk to locate the elusive local panacea. Having to go out several times to locate this plant ally turned out to be serendipitous, because each time I failed to find it, it gave me a reason to go walking again. I would have hesitated otherwise, even though I was seen in my third trimester. I had moved to Jamaica alone, a single mother to be, to give birth to my first child with my midwife, Tyoma, in attendance. When I finally found the plant, with some help from my neighbors, I was instructed on how to prepare a beverage that I learned is commonly drunk as a substitute for decaffeinated coffee. Due to colonization and the toxic whiteness that pervades U.S. society, I have had more than my share of issues and problems with authority. Mother Nature, on the whole other side of that society, so to speak, is the one authority I can always trust and abide by, one I willingly submit to. She is such a powerful and humbling, ultimately benevolent, albeit not nonviolent, teacher. Wilderness, Mother Nature, definitely is embodied within human beings. But what is human wilderness? Picture it as an ecosystem, the kind of interactions that take place inside our bodies to keep us alive. I like to think of my personal wilderness as a protected area like a national park. Yes, our bodies, any body, can be a refuge. The concept of human wilderness is additionally a metaphorical fusion, calm, etc. What do each of these feel like in the body, and where and when do they occur? What time of day? What time of life? Where in the world? With whom? If we know where our joy resides, we can go there. It may not be an easy trip. It may not be close by. It may take more time than we expected or less. There may or may not be shortcuts or pitfalls. Having direction, especially integral direction, originating from intuitive guidance, has helped me most with my mood anxiety selves, or that the greatest healer is within us alone. I mean, that may certainly be partially true, unique, powerful healing, and crucially, she never operates alone, always in connections, even if invisible to human perception. Unbounded by any body or state of being, much like the water we and our world are mostly made of, She constantly channels energy around and through our entire planet. Remember that Mother Nature is by definition wild, wild, the wilderness itself, and that everybody gets lost at least once in the wilderness. The mother always works in relations and connection, but often our aids are not recognizable in the moment. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And imagine for a moment your life right now as a path in the wilderness of your choosing. A forest, a desert, a wetland, a prairie. Imagine a body, your body spirit, walking along this path at a comfortable pace, observing your surroundings. What is the weather like? What do you see? What do you hear? What can you smell? Now, imagine that you arrive at an obstacle created by nature. A fallen tree, a rotted log, a stump, a boulder, a cactus, a deep or wide puddle, perhaps some very tall grass, spiky vegetation, or maybe even a small animal. You have to stop walking for a moment to figure out how to proceed. Imagine this obstacle is not so great that it would mean the end of your walk, nor the end of the trail. Imagine you can see your path clearly beyond the obstacle. You just have to get around or beyond it. You could climb over the rock or log. You could step onto, then off of the tree stump. You could splash through or jump over the puddle or in the puddle. You could walk carefully around the cactus or stomp through the tall grass. In the case of a predator or nesting mother, however, the best bet might be to retreat for the time being and return on another day or a later hour. This story. One gorgeous afternoon in the middle of a month-long silent retreat I took in the Himalayan foothills, I wandered down a new footpath during my free time. The trail sloped downward and the day was sunny and warm. Totally shocked, I stared in front of me. Next to a log lay a dead and decaying gray langur carcass. Langurs, old world monkeys, also called columbines, are not small animals. Its visible skull looked just like something out of a nightmare. My first thought, the one that had caused me to nearly scream, was that this corpse could be human. I stood there for a while, regulating my breathing. I don't remember if I resumed my walk that day or after turning around and choosing a different direction the next day, but eventually I took a deep inhale, exhaled, and walked forward. Although langurs are not at all small when stretched out the length of a human child of at least 5 years old, his body did not cover the entire width of the path and only blocked half of it at best. Heart racing, I told myself, you can see his skull, so he's definitely dead and not going to leap out at you. Columbines can be quite intimidating and seemingly aggressive in the wild. Once I literally got past my fear as a sight on the path, however, I could proceed forward. A few yards ahead at the bottom of the slope, I came to an arched wooden footbridge that crossed over a large body of deep for one moment those societally scattered rumors in your vicinity saying you cannot go this way, nor the imposter syndrome lies nor the imposter syndrome lies that you're not worthy to go on with whatever it is you are meant to or feel like doing. No matter what, actually just do it. Meaning, truly embrace your human wilderness and grow with your lakes in Sanskrit. And is adjacent to a larger town whose name means 9 lakes. Here, unmistakably, stood one of those numerous lakes, one I hadn't seen in all my days there up to then. I sat and meditated in gratitude under a tree on the other side of the peaceful body of deep, fresh water. On another day, I returned and on the way stopped and drew a picture of the monkey corpse, perhaps a fearsome avatar of Hanuman the Brave, who helped me learn a lesson about the nature of overcoming fear and the value of courage. Even if you can't execute a desired plan of action right now, don't give up on it. Let the natural obstacle sit there until you are ready to overcome it in whatever way works for you. Metaphorically, the obstacle may require climbing up, going around, splashing through, hopping on, or jumping over, cutting, or even slashing through. An overgrown path is nature itself, and you are nature too. Meditate on your hopefully mutual highest good. Real world applications for this overgrown path allegory could include having a decades long affair with fast food or candy, but just for tonight, cooking a childhood favorite meal, or baking something from scratch, or starting your very first garden with seeds collected from your kitchen, deciding to go hiking when you haven't taken a walk in years, taking up martial arts or ceramics, have some anxiety about it, or haven't done it in forever. It's all different for you, or so and so might see you mess up, or whatever the excuse the mind can create, you will get more out of it, out of that wild, unknowable experience, than if the path were plowed and tamed. In fact, please know that you're doing us all a favor because everybody wins when we witness and allow ourselves to be touched by courage in action. On the contrary, the opposite of taking an overgrown path would be acting in flow with one's unchecked privilege instead of subverting it to challenge a society that cultivates such inequality. The benefits for self and society in these common cases are significantly less. Far more troublesome and worrisome than any overgrown path obstacles are the man made blockades set deliberately in our metaphorical ways, such as hospitals that routinely let Black mothers die from preventable causes instead of empowering us to birth naturally, as our ancestors did when giving birth to humanity. Beautiful and unceded indigenous occupied land to fossil fuel companies to exploit worsening climate change. State sanctioned trialless executions of marginalized people committed with impunity by white supremacist police, mass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline, oil and gas pipelines, lack of reproductive choice and a foster care to prison pipeline, too, colorism, resulting in unacceptable astronomical rates of violence and murder against Black and Indigenous women, girls, mothers, and mages. The government's kidnapping thousands. Little to no vacation time, dismally low, stagnant wages, exorbitant costs of unsubsidized childcare, all resulting in no ability to spend time with wilderness because it has been systematically killed at home and travel is prohibitively expensive. So-called development, especially gentrification, aggressively killing nature, including precious human, sorry, so-called development, especially gentrification, aggressively killing nature, including the precious human wilderness of Black and brown children in our homes and neighborhoods. Don't let the flower boxes and coffee shops fool you, just to name a few. Meanwhile, parents of color are out here like, if you grew up with the outcomes, consequences, and symptoms of such manufactured and implanted trauma, I want you to know that the trauma you experienced is not your fault. Your healing is your resistance. Do it when and how it works for you. Otherwise, it probably won't be healing. Healing is non-linear. I'll just repeat that for us. Healing is non-linear. What or whoever is pressuring you is not healing you, themselves, or anyone, most likely. Healing is not linear and time is relative. So you do the math. You don't need pressure to heal. Healing is resistance. It is responsible by its very nature because healing responds to pain. Healing listens. Listening is deeply healing. Healing listens. Listening is deeply healing. Listening is a response to, and often the best one, especially with pain. However, I cannot, will not, and do not say that healing is your responsibility trope, so long as that implies that a victim of abuse or violence owes anyone anything. That is victim blaming, and victim blaming is really unacceptable to me. A distinctly USian proverb says the world doesn't owe you anything. But so then, why would victims of the world owe the world or anyone else anything? Although healing certainly should be considered in any legitimate form of reparations, healing itself is not about debt. Everyone deserves healing. Everyone deserves healing. Healing is a human right. Healing is a gift. Healing is not a duty because real life is not and should not aim to be the military. Healing is a responsibility. Once you start healing, you become responsible to that healing and all your actions held cosmically accountable to that healing and its goals for your life. Healers are responsible for making healing accessible. First, as they heal themselves, making their own healing possible requires being able to find ways of sustainably accessing it, and subsequently for those whom they take on the responsibility of healing. To some extent, there is a choice individually possible, ideally making made increasingly possible by one's own continued healing. Generally speaking, one like none of it. No implementation of the above ideals is foolproof, no matter poverty. Does that make poverty a disease? And if so, is it inherited? Yep. Preventable? Yep. Is there a cure? Yeah. What is it? Economic redistribution, reparations, universal health care, an enormous reduction to the point of elimination to be a doctor or even have a doctor's salary to be part of the solution. Anyone can start anytime. If you are poor, treat yourself as well as possible, as often as possible. Ask for help with pride. If and where and when us access to our land and human wilderness, billionaires. The concept of private property. To name two escape poverty and oppression, then they may not be able to share any healing they acquire with other oppressed folks who arguably need and deserve it the most because they must sell their healing gifts to try, more often than not failing, unfortunately, to permanently escape in a way that only her wilderness can. Mother Nature is the truest restorative healing force. When we are free to access her wilderness, we can connect to our highest selves, take solace in her vastness, her might, and immensity. Rejoice that her wisdom, timing, and beauty fill us with renewed vitality. Mother Nature teaches what value is inherently, irrevocably. Worth is not something to be possessed, it is moments of goodness experienced. True value is, quite simply, quality of time. My hummingbird would stab him with his beak. I am so grateful for my lovely friend who, in addition to showing off his vibrant iridescent beauty, teaches us in real time the power of connecting with diverse forms of nature, from the nasturtium to the bird to the child, mine and that of Mama Earth. Magic is natural, and nature connection is magical. It is sacred and deeply healing. It holds restorative power beyond our imaginations. Indeed, the act of providing nature connection itself can be a form of and care. Did you know the phrase, blood is thicker than water? Fundamental wisdom, our roots. Our roots connect us not to itself, in which they forever reside, that which forever upholds us all. This is literal. Perhaps Mother Earth, Allah, Uchimaka, Pachamama, Gaia, Tonantzin are doing it now too with us. Tapping into embodied wisdom awakens, nourishes, and dignifies us. We honor ourselves by speaking our truths, trusting our struggles, discarding shame, demanding freedom, and defending our human rights collectively, as well as individually, to be, to plex, to seek and experience pleasure, to define our own sexualities, to experience and appreciate beauty, the fog, the lethargy, and even the numbness that sometimes show up in our lives as uninvited visitors or boundaries can be a path too. A lot of folks associate boundaries with what we say no to, but boundaries are an essential element of solidarity. Boundaries are a source of liberation and, in a sense, limitlessness. Many think that they need boundaries against the poor and marginalized, but what we truly need are boundaries against the rich and power hungry. Powerful energy. And there's never been a better time to channel this than now. Boundaries are like rights. Everybody has them. Boundaries are something, they're our own safety net. And they create abundance. Enforcing them can vary widely, however. Clear boundaries, having them, just as well as communicating them, is a gift we can share with whomever we please as a necessity arises. Boundaries are not a comprehensive guidebook to avoid conflict, but they can provide something of a roadmap to our comfort zones for whenever we get lost and need to feel at home. You can define them alone or co-create them with others, depending on the situation. It's also important to be clear on what boundaries don't do. Boundaries are not about bigotry, and they will not protect you from being called the fuck out on that shit. Healthy boundaries are discriminatory, not prejudiced. They pick and choose and evaluate based on knowledge of self and observations of specific others. Not just people, also places, circumstances, and interpersonal dynamics, to name a few. When you love yourself, you organically increase your ability to love others. This society perverts that natural law, but it is high past time to fight back on that one by one. What if boundaries were a sustainable way of growing and leveraging privilege, subvert the hierarchy? Boundaries are a means of knowing your limits, harm reduction, building consent culture. How to set boundaries. 1. Know your limits. This will take self-reflection to learn. Listen to your body. This will take practice too. Meditation can help. Respect yourself and your life's mission, aka follow your dreams. The boundaries of others. Transcend fear to communicate. Challenge oppressive power dynamics. Grow a support system by supporting others when and where you are and feel able. The end. That is the end of chapter 6, a mammoth chapter, perhaps the longest in the book. Let me know what you think. Yep. Let me check the comments and see if I got anything here. 2 people I sent the link to. And comments over here, no comments. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna, almost 50 minutes long. I reuse these.